Hello, I'm Dan,
And I'm Graham.
and you are listening to or watching the More Than Roommates podcast. And if you're watching it, you might notice a little difference in the camera quality. We got upgraded phones. If you didn't know, we use our phones to record the podcast because the camera quality is good.
Yeah, you have like an older professional camera we've tried to record episodes on, but I feel like it just didn't quite turn out quite as good even as our old iPhones. But yeah, after 4 long years, we were finally upgraded from the 12 Pro Max to the 16 Pro Max.
Yes, so the difference is from a 12 to now a 16. So excited to hopefully that elevates the quality. So today we wanted to talk about when it is too early to tell your partner I love you, your boyfriend or girlfriend. Our friend is in a new relationship and she was talking to us. She was asking what our thoughts were if it were too early for her to tell her boyfriend she loves him. They've been dating for about a month, I think, and we were talking with her over drinks, and I was like, oh, this would actually be a really good podcast episode. So we put a pin in that conversation.
Yeah.
So here we are today. So Graham, what's your initial thought about when it's too early to tell your significant other you love them?
Yeah, my initial thought, honestly, there's probably no universal, right time to express that. But in, my own personal take on it, like, I think, one, you got to trust your gut. Anytime I've ever, felt like I was going to get in trouble if I did something and I didn't listen to that gut feeling, it always bites me. So on the flip side, if I have a really good gut feeling, like I did when we met, that I think is a huge factor for sure. Yeah. But I think another big important factor is to kind of dissect, when you're early on in a relationship, typically you're going to have elevated feelings, like it's exciting. You're on cloud 9, they call it the honeymoon phase for sure. So I think it's just being able to kind of, differentiate your feeling. Like, is it because it's so new and you're excited, or are they genuine feelings?
Yes. Sure. And I've heard people on the internet say you can know at 2 months, you can know at 2 weeks, right. You could know at 2 years. I think also your age factors into it. If you're in high school, I think that is a different situation, when you're in your first high school romance. But if you're older in life, if you know those feelings and this is someone that I want to spend time with and I want to reassure them that they're this important, I mean, you can say it kind of whenever. Yeah, sure. I think there are important things that you might need to mentally check with yourself before you're saying that. What would your reaction be if they didn't say I love you back? Would that just completely turn you off?
The reciprocation, you gotta, if you feel it and you're ready to throw that out there, you have to be prepared for them to maybe not say it back, and then maybe, that could make a big difference for sure. Just the reciprocity of the whole thing.
Yeah,
sure.
I think we told each other we love you about a month.
Yeah,
about a month in.
A month in at least, yeah.
And we both kind of knew. We were dancing around it. I was trying to play cool because I am younger and this was my first relationship, so I didn't want to be oh, I love you right away. So
and I think I felt very strongly about Dan, and maybe it was a defense mechanism of sorts, but I kind of said it jokingly. I feel like I remember, I wasn't joking, obviously, but I wanted to frame it as sort of oh, I love you, or whatever, just to, if you didn't say it back, I think it was a way of me kind of expecting to protect myself a little bit, but oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you can finish your thought.
No,
I think it's more important to maybe, I think that was something that we talk about all the time in the evenings. Communication is key.
Oh yeah.
And just
That's
having
like critical in a relationship, your number one priority for sure.
Right. And I think if you're really worried about how they're going to react, I don't think it's inappropriate to dissect the conversation. Like that's what we do every night. We just analyze conversations we've had and how we reacted to things. And so I mean, my advice to our friend was, if you say I love you, I don't think it's wrong or unromantic the next day to go and over breakfast or lunch to be like, okay, what do you think this means? Does this make you feel concerned that we're moving too fast? Do you think the next thing is we have to move in? Is this setting a time frame on that?
Right.
And I don't think those are like, especially if you're serious about the relationship, you should be having those conversations. When we were talking about moving in together, it happened very early. I think our friends I found out thought we moved in really fast, but we also talked about it. Like it wasn't like we both were on the same page. I assured you, like, just because we move in together does not mean that if you start to lose feelings that we can't do that. Like,
yeah, you were a realist with the situation. Yeah,
I was like, if you're not feeling it, I can move out. It's not like, don't ever feel like we have to stick together because we're living together. But
which that totally comes down to like your level of maturity too, for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's where
not everyone is as mature. So
that,
you really have to know. And did I cut you off?
No,
I'm sorry.
You're good.
Okay, I was just gonna say, backing up a little bit into our relationship dynamic. Obviously we were a pandemic couple, which, we were kind of mutually going through that same trauma at the same time, just with, being so disconnected from, really the rest of the world. I went, I think like a couple months, honestly, without seeing even my family, just because I was worried, I didn't want to spread that, so that kind of put us into a different position where things may be a little bit different now. So circumstances are a big thing to kind of factor into. But
yeah. And another point that was brought up was she asked my advice and she said, I'm considering saying I'm falling in love with you. And I told her, I said, I feel like that's a cop-out, that you are wanting them, you're setting them up to say I love you back without you taking that leap of faith. And I was retelling the story to my brother and he said, no, I think that's totally fine to say that because it is almost a little smaller step than saying I love you. That's just true. Reassuring them that I am developing these feelings, as things are progressing. So I think that's a valid thing if you would like to say I'm falling in love with you.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, my thought was like, again, that is when you're playing those mind games. Like, if they say I'm falling in love with you, does that set me up to say like just take the reins? Right. So that was something that we did very early on from like day one. We were like, I have strong feelings. I'm enjoying our time together. I would like to keep. So it wasn't those like, oh, I don't want to blow him up and text him too often, or I'm like, I have to wait 3 days to respond. We were just very like, I'm feeling these things.
Yeah. And I knew very like early on, like after our first date, it just went so well. We talked for like 2 hours before we even like ordered food. Like the waitress was so done with us.
Yeah, because she kept asking like, are you ready to order? We're like, oh, sorry, we haven't even looked at the menu. We were just like, just instantly.
But I remember looking into your eyes and just seeing like what a sweetheart you were. And I just knew like right from that moment, it felt like it. But another thing I wanted to talk about too, ways to maybe differentiate a little bit more, like the early on kind of like butterfly honeymoon,
like
type
lust
effect
versus love, almost.
Not lust versus love, just like being so head over heels at first because you're excited.
Yeah,
it's new. And with that said, I think another big thing is to maybe be able to see the different sides of the person you are falling in love with or think you love, like going through a hardship together, kind of like I said, COVID, but also seeing different things, like I early on, like my OCD was like very high, I feel like. And I don't know, I used to get like kind of snippy, I guess, when like I had never lived with anyone. So like going through and growing together, and like learning, how to, like be like make sure you're treating your partner with the utmost respect. That also like can help you develop, I think, stronger feelings for the person, if like you see that they're working on things or
Yeah, and I think that goes into when people don't know if they're ready to get married. They always say you need to see someone through all seasons of life.
Right.
And
yes.
That might happen at different periods, just depending on what happens in your life.
Exactly.
You might get hit with something very life-changing events very early on, or it might take hopefully years. You don't, and so that also, I mean, I was talking about with saying someone I love you versus marriage is very different, but
for sure.
I think it's important to see
similar concept. So
and just smaller scales. Like I would want to make sure I've seen my person in different environments. How do they interact in public? How do they interact with my friends? Those are important things. If they are important to you, if that you want them to get along with your friends, that might be some things to check off.
For sure.
And again, it's also, if you're feeling those things, you're feeling them, it's,
and that comes down to compatibility, I think too. As you kind of grow, over the days, weeks, months, you also kind of get a different view of your partner. And like we kind of quickly realized we are kind of like yin and yang to each other, as far as you're very creative and I'm more like numbers, kind of analytical driven. And another example I can think of too is when we were going to Omaha and we had a really frustrating time. I think we've talked about this in one of our episodes. Maybe we can
early on. It was like episode 2 or 3.
Yeah, the Omaha episode. I don't know what it's called. We might have to look. Maybe we can edit that in or something. Sorry if I'm giving you more work.
You're fine.
I think seeing how like we get frustrated at different times, and knowing that when one is frustrated, you just kind of got to take your reins and kind of help reel your partner back in. And I feel like we do really good at that,
Yes.
Whereas if I'm frustrated about something, you're like, okay, like I understand you're frustrated, but like there's nothing that can be done, depending on what the situation is.
Right.
But...
So an example is I get very anxious with traveling. It just stresses me out to no end. I'm trying to get better about it.
And I'm so relaxed.
And that surprises me. But I just feel like there's so much that can go wrong. You could be stranded and you're not home.
Yeah.
And so that has been where you've really stepped up and been like, just relax. But it's like, we're fine. Yeah. And then I think...
Or let me take something off your plate. Like I booked that hotel. And I was like, like if you need me to like drive or whatever, I can do that so you can relax, just different. Yeah.
And then I would say some of the more day-to-day things can upset you, if like the dog chews on something or, something breaks.
Yeah.
And then that's where I think I can step and be like, well, we can buy something new. We can fix it. We can just move on and not let it ruin your day. But that's where it just helps to know the things that set your partner off. And are you okay to deal with that person?
Yeah.
Is that something you're wanting to go
through? Are they willing to work on it too? Like that's also a huge thing. You don't want to invest in someone that's not going to work on their own level of maturity, because you don't want to be with someone that's cranky all the time.
And that's something that I love that we talk about. I like, when we have these late night conversations, I've brought up many times that something that I don't like that I do, that I don't realize I do it, but early on was that I would be on my phone and Graham would be talking to me and I would be checked out. And he's like, it bothers me. So I didn't take that as a personal attack. It's like, that is awful that I'm doing that. And so, after some time, I think we've gotten a lot better about that.
And then sometimes the roles reverse too. It happens.
It does.
Phones are,
but it's something that
distracting.
But there was a new one that we've been working on, and we had talked about it. And now I cannot think about like what our new. But I love that. We're not perfect, and we're not going to be perfect. But we can always say like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize." Like.
That would affect you, or or like razzing or something. Sometimes I can be like I can take things personally if I'm like, I don't know, in an off mood or something, and just trying to like know how to like help your partner, but also being willing to put in the work to work on yourself and know how to like calm yourself down without blowing up.
I think
for sure
one of the more recent worst days we've had together was installing our dishwasher.
Oh my gosh.
Probably one of the hardest things we've done. It
Yeah.
just, everything that could go wrong went wrong.
We started off with the wrong tone, honestly, because we thought we had paid for having it installed, when we bought the appliance, and then that turned out to be not the case at all. And they were like, "Oh, well, you didn't disconnect your old dishwasher, so we were just going to set it in place anyway. We weren't even going to install it. We're going to shove it in while you're going to have to pull it back out to hook it."
It was crazy.
So we were just frustrated from the very beginning. We were like, "Oh my God, we got to I don't know how to disconnect a dishwasher." We had to learn how to do all that and
buy parts and
the old
rewire.
copper piping was welded so oddly, and we have kind of a unique setup too, so it just made it very frustrating for us. But
8 hours later on a Saturday, we're still working on this. The sun is setting.
Whole Saturday,
our backs are aching because you're in a corner, and I'd made multiple trips. The frustrating thing was our water was shut off, and we couldn't turn it back on without it being hooked up, because then water would be going everywhere. So we were at our wits' end. We're at this predicament, and we were getting crabby with each other, so beyond frustrated.
Yeah.
And so we literally spent an hour. I just laid in the bedroom,
and you
laid on the couch.
We weren't mad at each other, but we just needed to
zone
out and reset.
Yes. Yeah. And just come up with a plan. Just think about it, because you can only force things so much when you're trying to hook something up. So we just literally, and it took us that hour to just regroup and
decompress.
We got this. So and it's just knowing
it helps.
It just helps knowing we might have snipped at each other, but again, it's not.
We know it's not personal. We're just,
we apologized afterwards. It's just one of those things,
Yeah.
It's just,
But it all helps. I guess to summarize that, it helps foster a deeper connection. And things like that can really, they're putting you through the ringer to know, do you truly love this person?
And can you work with them? And when you're frustrated, to not take it out on them and just understand what you're frustrated about.
Right. Yeah. And you shouldn't want to take it out on your partner either.
No.
So that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but.
Yeah. So I guess to sum it up, it's never too early. I mean, I'm not a weekend. That's my recommendation, to give them some space, because again, you could be in that first butterfly feeling, but
and you gotta be receptive, to how is it gonna work if you throw it out, the reciprocation of it, just kind of backing back into that. It's another thing you got to be prepared for. How would you feel if you told them you love them and they said it was too early, or that they're not there? You have to know how that would affect you mentally too.
Yeah, and I think also, if you do say it and they don't say it back, I would give them some time. Don't make it seem like you're interrogating them, but I don't think it's a problem to talk about. Does that make you uncomfortable that I told you? Does that mean, he and the person just might be like, I'm just not ready. I've got a lot going on, and
everyone can react differently.
And I wouldn't take that personally or say that they're not interested. I would just give it some time, but keep that dialogue. Don't just let yourself dwell in your thoughts. Reach out to them saying, I'm really thinking about this, and I think if they're a true partner and we're worried about your mental health or mental well-being, they would be ready to have those conversations to reassure you in whatever way is needed.
Exactly.
So don't settle for less.
Yeah. So before we wrap it up, I actually kind of wanted to maybe touch on some of the LGBT aspects of relationships, because I think fundamentally they work a lot differently than a hetero relationship.
Okay.
In multiple ways. Obviously there are stereotypes, out there, which I think we've maybe talked about this too. It's kind of like the U-Haul effect, which, it's more stereotypical, I think, for a lesbian couple, where people tend to think they move a lot faster. There's
also gay couples. I would just say gay men,
but that too.
They move fast.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not just lesbians for sure. Yeah. But that's kind of the stereotype, and kind of dissecting that further, I mean, it makes sense. We have we're a small set of the population, and most of us growing up, we weren't really allowed to express our feelings or have those early relationships early on. So I think some people could be in mentally a different place, and they might just be head over heels, like have a tendency to go in deeper at first, just from maybe missing that, not being able to explore those young love feelings, when you're younger too.
Yeah, and I also
not saying everyone. It's circumstantial. Yeah. Like you have experience, from different relationships too, and
I think of it more of is it patriarchal standard for hetero couples of there's a lot more judgment, I think, with straight couples if you don't do things in the proper order. Date, married, move in, have children. Where with gay couples, there aren't those checklists that it doesn't matter what order. We're not going to have kids like that. And to me, it was more of a practical standpoint of we're staying together. I'm paying a landlord that I don't have any feelings towards money every month to have my house sit empty. Whereas if I'm spending every night here, we're working towards building an empire together.
Right.
Why wouldn't we want to pool our resources? And if it doesn't work out, I was going to be paying someone rent anyway. Why not just assist you?
Yeah. Also, like, it kind of worked out that way too, because, like, yes, you and I don't know if we can see a little Poochie Pal back there, but like, yes, you guys kind of like started staying with me like full time very early on, but also like you didn't officially move in until your lease was ending.
Yeah.
And that was several months into the relationship, at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 months in.
Yeah.
Which, sure, that's still like early, because we had been cohabitating, I guess, but it's still, we knew at that point we had been through some, we had experience, and we knew that it was the right time, to and you were mature about it, as you pointed out.
We were older. I mean, it's not like we were 20, so I knew how to take care of myself, and we knew what was healthy, and we just kind of knew. And I think hopefully you might know, they say when you know, we kind of just knew it.
That gut feeling.
I don't know what our friends were saying behind our backs. I'm sure they were like, what is going on?
I remember we kind of got a lot of flack, like jokingly, not like
I'm sure people really did have something to say, which is, I mean, it is what it is. You can block out the haters, but I mean, I'm sure if our friends were in the same situation, we'd be like, whoa, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
But
pot meet kettle.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, but hopefully you found some insight. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What are your thoughts about when it's too early to say I love you, or if you have any relationship advice?
Yeah, and I'd like to hear too, do you see a queer relationship having like different paces or standards in a straight relationship? I don't know. Let me know.
Yeah,
that's how I feel, but I'd like to hear it from y'all too.
And then thanks for listening, and stay loyal to our podcast. We're still growing, and we'll be back with another episode.
We're trying to get back on that train. We've just had some career things, and it's been tough out here.
And I also don't want us to force an episode when we're not ready to talk about something. This is still a fun passion for us. And,
we want to make sure.
I think that's also how people get in trouble, like feeling that they have to talk about every thing. And we really try to think out what we want to discuss on here. So anyway, subscribe, like, tell us your thoughts on the episode.
Do all the things. We would love it.
Yeah, we're trying to grow.
It would help us.
Okay, have a good day.
Thank you.